Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's been an incredible couple days. I feel like I'm amongst my people. It's been really nice. I'm gonna talk to you about a case study today. So yesterday, I don't remember which presenter, but one of them asked us, have you ever been at a company where day one, they're like, hey, here's your desk, and by the way, we need you to launch this product by next week. And I raised my hand, because that is exactly what happened to me. I came to Cox Automotive, I'd never worked in automotive before, and they're like, hey, we need you to launch one of our top 3 priorities for the entire year. And I'm like, hey, I will do that. So this is the story about that challenge and what I found myself faced with. So today, I'm gonna learn a couple things that hopefully you could take away with you. First, a little bit about the automotive industry that perhaps some of you didn't know. We're going to talk about how to think about differentiation, and we're going to learn a customer first way of speaking about our products. So let me start with a little bit of background. I work for Cox Automotive, and everyone who I've met here has been, hey, what's Cox Automotive? So Cox Enterprises is a humongous company that you've heard of, you just don't realize it. So we have 3 divisions. One is our Cox Communications, which is probably in, I don't know if it's in Austin, but it's in a lot of cities. The second is Cox Media, which owns a number of media companies, including the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a lot of the radio stations. And then the third is Cox Automotive. So Cox Automotive is a conglomerate of brands that help dealers get their jobs done. Most popular ones you're familiar with are probably Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book, but I work for Manheim, which is the largest automotive auction that, like I said, you've never heard of, but we're kind of a big deal. And so I'm gonna tell you today about Manheim and about the story of my product launch. So let's back up and just talk about automotive remarketing. So I know you're probably familiar with the word remarketing from your marketing work, but automotive remarketing is another term for essentially what you do with a vehicle after you decide you're not going to sell it on your lot. So here's sort of the very, very, very high level flow. So first of all, let's start with this. Who owns a vehicle? Who owns a car? Okay, so keep your hands up. If you own you know your car was used when you bought it, you own a used car. Put it down if it was new. And so keep your hands up if you bought that used car from a dealer and not from like Craigslist or a friend. So this is those people who you bought your car from, they're my customers. So here's sort of the story and how it all happens. Someone will return a car to their lot. Let's say it's an off-lease vehicle. And from there, that dealer has 2 choices. One, they can recondition that car and sell it on their lot with a big bow and one of those flappy hand things off the side of the highway, or they can send it to the auction and sell it to another dealer there. That's very high level, but that's essentially the backbone of the business. And the largest auction company in the nation as well as the world is Manheim. So for those of you who aren't familiar with auto auctions or have never been to one, these, if you could see those pictures, that is what an automotive auction looks like. When I talk to my mom, I tell her it's Christie's for cars. It is literally a live auction lane with vehicles driving through. Stand back, because they will drive over you. You have an auctioneer at the front, and he is calling cars. And look at all those people, mostly men, standing around, and there's literally someone pointing, and I'm going to do a very bad impersonation, but that caller is, oh, that it's like the craziest thing, like you can't even believe that these things exist. But Manheim's been around for 75 years. We celebrate 75 years this year. That'll be next year's presentation, is the branding of that. So these are automotive auctions, but much like many industries, and I'm sure all of yours, automotive is changing and fast. I mean, you know already from mobility, because many of you have taken Uber just this weekend. And auto remarketing is facing a digital revolution, and understandably so. First of all, to pretty obvious reasons. First of all, to buy and sell vehicles online, it's cheaper. The fees are cheaper, so we charge you less if you buy your vehicle online versus physically at the auction. You have lower transportation costs because you don't have to pay to get your vehicle to the auction and then get it to the buyer. And then you have lower holding costs. Every day a vehicle that a dealer isn't going to sell sits on their lot, it costs them money. It's also faster, obviously, right? You cut out, and perhaps up to an entire week, if not more, of sitting on an auction's lot waiting for sale day. You could sell it directly off your lot, and if you're a buyer, you can buy it directly off of someone's lot. You cut out, essentially, Manheim, we're the middleman, but we'll help you facilitate it. So Manheim has a website, it's sort of like eBay for cars, dealer to dealer. But what's happened in the industry is that these new guys who have no automotive background are entering the space with new apps. These are our two biggest competitors. And they are not automotive companies. They didn't start as automotive companies. So TradeRev is a brand new startup based in Canada. And ACV, also a startup. And I looked this up because I was very curious who these guys were. They were auto enthusiasts. So you see what I'm dealing with. We have these guys who just started these apps because they realized the opportunity. And then you have us, and we're still, right? Like live in auction. I'm getting better at it. And so here was our problem. So as the leader in the auto marketing space, we had to react and fast. So what did we do? We launched our own app, Manheim Express. And let me give you the explain it to mom version again, if I can. So basically, I've kind of given you the background, so you could probably figure out how this works. I'm a dealer, I get a lot, let's say I'm a BMW dealer, I get a Honda turn-in because someone has decided, having a middle life crisis and they decided to upgrade to a Beamer. I don't sell Hondas, I'm not gonna sell a Honda on my lot. Other middle life crisis people are coming to buy Beamers. So I can list it directly from my phone. In literally 10 minutes, it's up on eBay for cars. And I have options here too. So I can list it, and now I can bring people to the lot to list it, so I don't even have to do it. I save time and money in doing that, and margin compression is the #1 complaint of all dealers that you talk to. So this is a really, a big thing. It's revolutionary in the industry. But guess what? 2 guys beat us to it. And this is what the landscape looks like. And I laughed yesterday when I think it was Martin's for the first presentation when he showed the video of his product, and it was like hand in Hawaii holding a phone and hand here holding a phone, because my whole world is hands holding phones. And if anybody can think of a better way to visualize a product app, please contact me, because I really need to get away from a hand holding a phone, but here we are. And this is the situation. This was the problem I was faced with. So let me go a little deeper into sort of the landscape and what we were dealing with some of the challenge. First of all, this was a digital remarketing space race, and we were America, I guess. So TradeRev started in 2015. Like I said, they're a new startup. They were based in Canada, and they started kind of coming down into America in that sort of northeast area of the country. ACV started also northeast, Buffalo, New York, as ACV Auto Auctions, and they started in 2016. Manheim Express, we didn't even launch until 2019, so we've got a number of years that they're ahead of us. So that's sort of the competitive race. And then there's kind of them versus us in terms of customer perception. So let's think about TradeRev. These guys were known as, from our research, very cutting edge. They were acquired by our largest competitor, our largest brick and mortar competitor. So they have that backing them now. They're really they're technology first. They were all over social media. Like, they were getting stuff up like the next day, and we were racing and putting videos together to try to compete with them. ACV, they were known as a little like smart. People saw them as a disruptor in this space. They were maybe taken a little bit more serious than ACV. They had these 20-minute auctions, whereas ours were not timed. And they were expanding really quickly. So they were kind of encroaching on our space. And then there's us. We're the big guys, we're old hat, we're based in an auction. People knew us as that auction. We're very traditional, and we are known to have high fees, even though that's not right. That's the perception that customers had about us. And finally, this was the reality of the product roadmap. We were essentially a Me Too. All three were a digital dealer-to-dealer app. All three had lower fees than InLane. All three had high-tech images. We might have said it in different ways, but we had high-tech images. All three offered upsells to the product, and all three were rapidly growing. What do you do? How do you market this? Why us? Why pick us over these other guys? So I'm going to stop and try to make this a little interactive. And there's no right answer. And I will show you what I did, but I'd love to hear from you. What would you do?
I would do the obvious one, which is all these startups, they're fly by night, they could go under. You know, they're venture funded, it's a bubble. Cox has been around forever, huge company, you can rely on us. We're gonna be there for you.
You leverage your ecosystem. You own the market in a lot of other places, you choose it.
Anyone else while I'm right over here? Their ideas? Don't mind me, I really just wanted to walk back and forth on the room. Does somebody over on this side think about what you're going to say next? Charlie, you're on.
Thank you. I better come up with an idea. I was going to say trust, just the place in the industry and leveraging the previous relationships, like you said.
Aaron, did you have an idea?
I'm wondering if there's something you could do around knowing the auto industry more. So something around quality of the cars or inspections or something associated with your expertise in automotive. And then also, I don't know what your distribution network looks like, but if you can get cars to people faster or with less transport costs, given that they're kind of isolated from a location perspective.
Gosh, what a bunch of smarty pants. Anybody else? Oh, come on. All right, it's back to you.
All right, so my company's hiring and everyone gets the job. So here's what we did. First, and by the way, everyone was right in some way or the other. Some of these things you said are represented in what I'm going to show you, and others are things we've done since. But first and foremost, we had to identify the differentiators. How were we different than these two other guys? And for this, we really had to think larger than Manheim Express as the product. Manheim Express is obviously part of the Manheim infrastructure, which includes the Manheim Marketplace, which is a lot bigger than Manheim Express, and it's something our competitors don't have. Therefore, because we're part of this bigger marketplace, our buyer base is bigger, our number of sellers are bigger, we have relationships with more dealers who have been using us for 75 years, and we have a bigger sales force. We have more boots on the ground, literally. Next, we needed to then translate those differentiators into product reasons to believe, because if the customer doesn't care, that means then our differentiators don't mean a thing. So we needed to answer the so what. So we have a bigger buyer base, but that means we have more eyeballs on our inventory than anybody else, more people to see your listing for sellers. For buyers, we have more inventory because we have more sellers, we have more people listing, they're listing more cars, so we have a bigger inventory available to you. And in terms of our sales base, our inventory is available across the nation. Like I said, these guys were kind of coming in the Northeast, some in California, but they weren't national yet. And we could be fast. And then the third thing is then to answer why does this matter to me? And everyone knows this term, but the WIFM. What's in it for me? So what? So you guys have more eyeballs. Okay, what does that mean to me? Because dealers need a little bit more explaining. So this is an internal term, but we called this campaign competitor attack. And it was our way of using those 3 steps to position ourselves against our competitors. So if we look at those sort of 2 steps, the differentiator, our larger buyer base, the reason to believe, more eyeballs on our inventory, but using numbers and actual facts, we said the WIFM is we have 150 unique digital buyers, 150,000 unique digital buyers that are looking at your inventory every day. And we showed it like this. Our buyers and theirs. And then we used the word fact because they couldn't question that. They couldn't second guess that. We have 150,000 digital buyers in our marketplace, Manheim Express. The next differentiator was more sellers on the platform. More inventory available to a buyer? Why do I care? Because the fact is that equates to 84,000 vehicles listed daily. Now that wasn't Manheim Express vehicles, but it was in our marketplace, so we stretched that one a little bit. But at the end of the day, we are part of the larger Manheim. I think someone said over here, we're representing that we are larger. We are bigger than ManX. We're Manheim. And we showed it like this. And our fact was the 84,000 vehicles listed every day, Manheim Express, and access to those vehicles. And finally, our national sales force. We have inventory across the country was our reason to believe. And our WIFM was inventory close to you. And like someone said over there, transportation's less expensive if it's closer to you. That's something our competitors definitely didn't have. And our fact was that inventory was coast to coast. So you didn't have to pay a fortune to get a car in Buffalo, even though you bought it in 20 minutes. So that was the campaign. We rolled out, these are 3 of the 6 versions that we rolled out. And we rolled out a full campaign that included paid media, that digital and programmatic, social media, emails to a targeted audience. We did sales enablement, talked a lot about this week. We were at industry events with this message, and of course we were on social for both paid and organic. And they all sort of took, in their different shapes and forms, this campaign infiltrated. Let's see if this works. So how'd we do? Oh, thank you. The numbers were stellar, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to everyone who presented on measurement, but I don't have competitive numbers. I just have ours, so we know how we did, which is often the case, right? You can never really paint the full story. But the results were off the charts. So this is just 2019 numbers. We grew by, it sounds ridiculous, 1,300%. But in comparison, the raw numbers are really more impactful. In week 1 of 2019, we had 88 cars sold weekly. And in week 52, we had over 1,200 cars sold weekly. We were growing really fast. Total for the year, we sold over 50,000 cars. And that was 65% over what we thought we did. So we should set our expectations higher this year. In terms of increase in buyers and sellers, which was really our main driver on this, we increased from about 380 buyers in week 1 to over 2,200 by the end of the year. And similar sort of lift in sellers, we saw about 300 sellers in week 1 and 1,300 at the end of the year. And that number continues to increase because we have boots on the ground listing cars for you, which is great. So campaign worked really well, and we didn't piss anyone off, which was good because we were a little worried about that. But it was really important to be able to take into consideration kind of what's important and think bigger to help differentiate beyond just kind of the landscape. It can be so easy to narrow in on the situation. Think bigger to help you self-differentiate. And that's it.
Questions for Sherry? We want to know if you got a raise.
I'll let you know at the end of the month.
So, given that the campaign was so rooted around data and claims, I would just love to get more insight into working with both data teams and legal teams on making this happen. We work at a large organization where we try and leverage claims as much as possible, but we find that a lot of times we come in wanting to say one thing, and I see people kind of smiling and nodding. Legal is like, oh hell no. So I would love to just understand if that's something that you ran into, and thanks.
Yeah, I'm considering dentistry school because it was like pulling teeth. There were two big challenges with that. One was getting the data. You would think it would be easy to pull number of people who have purchased during X date and Y date off of our platform, but it wasn't so easy. So what we had to do was we started with sort of a short list of metrics we had, and then we had to work with the data team to figure out what we could get. And so that was sort of challenge number one we had to overcome. And then once we had some solid numbers, we had to make sure they represented us correctly. And then there was legal. So I went back and forth with legal, back and forth for a while, maybe a month's time. Yes, you could say this, and it wasn't the numbers that were the problem, it was the way I would phrase them. So she'd say, oh, you have to tweak it like this or tweak it like that. But we were really committed to this campaign. We really liked the idea of it, and we thought it had a strong hold, and it really presented what we wanted to get out there. And by the way, Mannheim doesn't put ads like this out there that often, so we had to get it right. So it was worth it, but not easy.
Thanks for a great presentation. I just have one question. In addition to the number of buyers and sellers and those increases, were you able to identify or generate additional value props as a result of this launch, like reduction in number of days to sell or an increased margin that dealers were able to sell those vehicles for?
That answer to that ties back to the last question, because that was data that we were asking for and it was hard to get. And then you can't necessarily get it from dealers because that's not something our research asks right now or feels comfortable asking right now. So what we're in right now, and I've heard a lot about testimonials and quotes over the last few weeks, we felt we were too early stage in the product life to get testimonials. A lot of people had been purchasing, but maybe a couple here and there. So what we've done is we've actually had a whole testimonial project we put on hold, and we've just now started it up. The product is about 1.5 years old, and that's where we're hoping to get some of those inputs, where we really can tell a story of a dealer who's truly adopted this and what their story is, how it's benefited their day-to-day, how much time they save, how much money they've saved, how it affects the bottom line and all that. So we're working on it. We're getting there. I want it now, but...
So it seems like you had a short time to not only do all the research, talk to the data team, come up with the messaging, but then also convince like the creative teams, like for example, ads, copywriters, designers, that your idea was the most sound. How did you do that?
So the part of the story that I didn't tell was that the reason we launched this campaign was because the head of all of Cox Automotive, he's kind of a big deal, he saw our first ad campaign in one of our trade magazines, called our CMO over and said, this won't do. So we sort of had the leg up from the start in pushing the envelope out of the normal comfort zone of Cox Auto. So that was good. And then I think we shot around a few ideas, and at the end of the day, this was the one we landed on. We talked a lot about relationship building over the last few days. I feel very strongly that it's a partnership between me and my stakeholders, and I have really, really challenging stakeholders. So I've learned to be a partner, loop them in early, get their, I'm leading the effort, but I'm almost making them feel like it's their idea. And in doing that, they're on board faster because I'm asking for their input really early on when we're in sketch phase, and ushering them through the whole project, setting timelines, expectations, and all that up front and as we go. So getting buy-in was sort of part of the process.
Yeah, it was an awesome presentation. My question is, those slides and the thought process seem so simplistic, but I know it didn't start there. So how do you narrow it down to 3 differentiators that are succinct and clear? I mean, you must have started with, I don't know, hundreds?
Unfortunately not, because we didn't really have that many differentiators. The product itself was really me too. I mean, we needed to have table stakes before we could even differentiate. So that part wasn't the hard part, but getting to the right story around the differentiators we did find, that was the key. And then we got to the reasons to believe almost like out of order. We were like, oh, we should have a reason to believe. Oh, what are our reasons to believe? Oh, here they are. Yeah, we know that, but we hadn't thought about it that way. So I liked the way that after the fact, right, 2020, or hindsight's 2020, I like the way that this process that I think of things now, really step by step, like what are the differentiators, why does that matter, and then why does that matter to them?
Nope, another question over there. Does anybody have a question after this? Because we're going to have to wrap up, and I'll make sure I get the microphone in the right place really fast. Anybody else after this one? All right, bringing it home.
I'm just curious if you were able to adjust the pricing or eliminate maybe the cost of trades as kind of a competitive approach, seen as a little bit of a commodity, it seems.
Yeah, it's a good question. Overall, we're not able to adjust pricing day to day. However, we have run targeted promotions like no buy fees. We actually ran that last February. We saw a huge lift, and that was just barrier to entry. So just to try, a trial incentive basically. And since then, we've done also a seller promotion. So we've done promotions on both sides. We will probably continue to do them, but the first few we did were really mass. Anyone could get them. Now that the product's been adopted, we're sort of more in adoption phase. We're narrowing down who we're doing the buy to, and so we recently did a incentive for new buyers. So try it first, your first time, and we'll continue to do that with sort of select targeted audiences.
Another round of applause. That was great.